Hello, internets. Welcome back to the Kinky and Trans TG BDSM podcast. It's your girl, Lindsay19. Today, I wanted to give just a little bit more of my story as a kinkster and as a trans person. So, where I last left the previous episode was getting into a little bit some of my first experiences being submissive through being a cam girl. And so I kind of wanted to springboard on that and discuss a little bit about where I am right now in my journey before I start bringing in other people and talking to them. So being free to pursue BDSM as like my actual self is something that is a long time coming. It's like I said, 21 years or so, I tried to be a boy as best I could. Fell into a long-term relationship with a vanilla woman and was never really free to express that side of me. Shortly after I transitioned, it was a kind of thing of I will come back to the BDSM stuff and discover what it means to me then. I am now I'm very thoroughly in that phase right now. And it took me a little bit by storm. I didn't expect it to hit me so hard when I did start like practicing a little bit of submission here and there. In a lot of ways, my approach to trying to finally engage in BDSM activities with people is kind of how I view being trans so late in life. You know, I didn't transition until I was 35, and I didn't understand who I was until I was 35. And so in a lot of ways, it's been kind of this story of like this feeling that I had a lot, especially early transition, that I had missed my life. That if I had been given the opportunity to live at an earlier age, I can't help but feel like I would have been much happier. Obviously, the experiences we have build into the characters that we are now, and I'm fairly happy with who I've turned out to be. And it's debatable whether I would still be the same person if I had known and had transitioned. I just don't know. But there's really no point in just digging into the past like that and beating myself up over the fact that I missed so much. You know, arguably I missed my best years, my 20s and everything. You know, if I had been able to transition when I was younger, I would have been it would have been so much better. But I used to really let that bog me down like a year or so ago. But luckily now I've become a lot more comfortable with where I am and being here now at least. But in a lot of ways, being trans later in life and embracing my BDSM side so late in life has become like this double whammy of like I'm impatient to live in some ways. Like I have waited long enough. I want this. Like I deserve this. This is for me. And I'm not going to sleep on this. I'm not going to put it back on the shelf. This is and I've described, rediscovering BDSM, a year after I transitioned, is kind of being like a second transition in some ways. This second set of like self-discoveries and I didn't know just how deep it would go until I started playing with like DOMs and stuff like that. I had a couple of just sort of like DOM sessions on the camera shows. Just kind of having guys like give me a little bit of orders, tell me what to do, things like that, which were fine. But again, I had that one experience with that one guy who came in and really put me through, like, I guess you could say my first scene. And like I said, it was a couple hours. I was like covered in sweat by the end. It was really, really, really good. And I mentioned that in the previous episode, that it was so good. And if I had known, I would, of course, done the entire thing for free. Because that had opened up this door in me that I didn't quite know existed, of this place that I wanted to go in my head as a submissive. I got pretty into it. It wasn't too long after that experience that I met a trans man that would essentially become my first dom in real life. And we he was married, and it was an open thing, so it would become this thing that like we all three sat down and negotiated what this dynamic would be, what it would look like, what I would be to him, what I would be to her. And we were very, very open about the open line of communication, about having what we called dinner table discussions, where we would meet outside of the dynamic and really do maintenance on the dynamic. And we would try to do that like once a week or maybe once every other week, depending. I was with this man for 5 weeks. We had a dynamic, and it ended about 2 weeks ago, maybe a little bit over 2 weeks ago. And I was kind of his first submissive, in the same way that I topped my longtime girlfriend, but I wasn't her dom. It was sort of a similar situation with him and his wife, where they had engaged in some play, but when I met her, she described herself explicitly that she was not a submissive, and that she would be happy that he had a place to work out some of his kinks and what he wanted to achieve from being a dominant. So yeah, so we were very much in similar boats about our level of experience. He was very book smart. I tend to be very book smart, but we didn't have a lot of real world experience engaging in what we wanted. So and we're both trans. So I felt like this was a really good match. I thought, I was very happy with it, with the match. I was very happy with the line of communication. I was very happy with the way our kinks aligned. We had very good kink alignment. We matched up on a number of different things. We were both very much into like total power exchange, into like 24/7 dynamic, into him taking on very much like a caretaker role, a guidance role, and so I felt really, really good about it, and he did too, and there was a couple of rough spots in the beginning of us working out what we were going to be, how often we were going to meet, how often we would play. And it was also this double whammy of we have to get to know each other first, because we didn't really we met at a previous job. We had kind of caught up a little bit, but until we approached each other to do a dom-sub relationship, we didn't know each other that well. And so it was also this thing of like, well, we also have to get to know each other. So we need to have like date nights and stuff. So it was kind of like building a house, but also still trying to pour the foundation and check it for integrity. So it was difficult in a number of different ways. And obviously there was 3 of us involved. If it had just been he and I, it probably would have been very different. But it was it was new for everybody. Nobody quite knew how to navigate it. I would later describe myself as having suffered some sub frenzy. He most definitely suffered some dom frenzy, even though he never admitted it. After about a week and a half, he asked me for my neck size. And I was like very excited about that, but I was also a little leery. Because we had talked about, we both were into the idea of like collaring and me wearing I've always wanted to wear like an eternity collar and stuff. And he had gotten a cheaper imitation brand. And we kind of presented a little bit of like, well, let's see how this looks, how it feels. Let's see if this is your size. And so I let him put it on me. And I told him though, because we had not really discussed this, I was like, I think we both know what a big deal this is. So I will wear this for you, but this is your collar and I keep the key. That was a negotiation. That's what I told him when he put it on me, is basically, I'm keeping the key. I will take this for a test drive. We will see where this goes. I knew it was too soon. I knew, but I let him do it anyway. It was after a couple more weeks that I felt very happy with the dynamic. There was a couple of hiccups along the way. We both had very long discussions about those hiccups, determined that we would grow from them and not let them we understood that these kind of relationships and relationships in general take a lot of work and a lot of maintenance. So we were resolved to figuring this out, and not letting it, break us apart. Um, but my needs were not getting met in that relationship, and we had talked about it several times. I tried to make it as easy as I could for him, as far as like ways he could remotely engage me as a submissive, because we both led kind of conflicting work schedules, and he just was always busy. He was always busy. He never seemed to be able to make time for me, and when he did, he was always tired. And so I told him again and again and again, I was like, if you do not have the time or energy for me, you need to tell me. And he would assure me that wasn't the case, that he wanted this, that he was very much in this, and that he would not suddenly just like flip on me or anything like that. So when we did communicate, we communicated very, very well. We would have these long multiple hour discussions. We would both feel very, very good by the end of it. But then on his part, there didn't seem to be a lot of follow through on the things we talked about. I was very much committed to my role, and I would always uphold my end of the bargains, when I felt that my input into the dynamic was being reciprocated. Things like that include like 3 pictures a day were expectations of me, like a picture of my outfit, a sexy picture, and then like a picture of my outfit that I was going to wear if I was going to do a cam show that night. And that was designed to keep us in regular contact, to keep us engaged with each other. It was also a thing of like sort of a task, and I was very much into that, of having tasks set for me. 20 minutes of voice training a night, 3 30-minute blocks of reading a week. These were tasks that we negotiated that I would do, and that was part of what I wanted to achieve from my submission, was bettering myself as a person and growing as a person, and having somebody there who was in my corner to check me and to make sure I was doing these things. And that was some of the stuff I wanted to achieve from the dynamic. And a lot of that came from him. I honestly didn't realize so much of that was involved in the kind of dynamic that I wanted. So for a lot of reasons, the dynamic was very good for me to help me explore what I wanted to get from submission, but also what I wanted in a dominant. And yeah. It didn't work out. It didn't work out, and it ended fairly poorly. But it was after. So we eventually, I had surrendered the key to him, to the caller, when I felt that I was comfortable in the dynamic and that we were heading in a positive direction. I surrendered the key to it. We talked about considering me collared at this point, about what that meant to us. And we both very much agreed. It was like, and he's the one who said it. He was like, it's basically like a wedding ring. It's like a sign of commitment. It's the kink equivalent of a wedding ring. And that's what I needed to hear. And that's what I was hoping to hear. And when he said it, I, again, felt more secure about things. And, we didn't do a ceremony, but we agreed that we would do one, sort of a thing. So we did that. I surrendered the key. He ended up upsetting me again, like later that week. And then, the wearing, and I told him too, later, I was like, you will never know what it feels like to wear somebody's collar and to be upset with them and to not have them try to talk to you, because it was very much like a hot and cold thing, or like when we did talk, we talked very good. When we didn't talk, I felt like he was a million miles away and I couldn't reach him. It was just like, he flipped this switch of like, I'm very engaged with you. I'm very concerned about you. I really care for you. And then it's like, I would call and he would be like, what's up? And I'm like, what's up? What do you mean, what's up? Like, don't answer the phone like that to me. Like, I'm not your homeboy. Like, and they'll be like, yeah, what's up? Because he would do that sometimes. And I'd be like, don't. So there was a lot of upsetting things, there was a lot of red flags that I chose to ignore. Even early on red flags that I chose to ignore because I wanted it to work out so bad. I was so invested. I thought it was perfect being, we're two trans people. I felt inherently safer with him because there's something about cis people that I'm still working through some of my insecurities, especially with cisgendered men, where I don't want to be. There's something inherently I feel like I'm more vulnerable with them, and so I need to take my time more. And obviously, like, just because somebody's trans doesn't mean they're an ideal partner for me or anything, but there's something about that being a safer place for me because they get it. The way my dom felt without his binder on is how I felt without my hair on. I didn't have to explain that to him. He just knows. And so there was something about that was very appealing to me. And I was very committed to making this dynamic work out, even if it wasn't perfect. Again and again, I use this analogy of why throw out the whole buffet just because of a couple of bad dishes. Well, actually, it started out me saying, why throw out the whole buffet because of one bad dish? And eventually I couldn't say it anymore. It was like, well, why throw it all out because of a couple of bad dishes? And I was very much selling myself short, and just I couldn't accept the fact that there could be something better for me because I have a lot of I still struggle with some self-loathing and everything, and about thinking that I'm not as worthy as another person because I'm trans. I struggle with that. I am getting better with it, but kinky dating is very difficult, especially when you're trans and you get fetishized a lot by men and by women. Like it happens from both cisgendered people. Like I've been, and so it's another area I have to navigate about, is this person want me because I'm trans and that's just a conquest thing or a fetish thing or an exotic thing, or they want a unicorn, or are they actually interested in me as a person? And it's just difficult. Dating is hard. Trans dating is even harder, I feel like. And then kinky trans dating is a fucking nightmare, from my experience so far. So I really wanted it to work out. We were getting close to a breaking point, we could tell. And so we had a meeting to discuss the maintenance of the dynamic again. He was about to go out of town. We made some negotiations about, again, coming back to I gave him 6 ways to remote engage me as a submissive, something he could do from his phone at night to engage me. And I told him, I was like, some of the stuff can take you less than 5 minutes to do. Like, tell me to do this, have me do this, choose my outfit for the next day, choose my lingerie for the next day, just something to keep me engaged and to keep us connected. And he agreed that he would do these things. But he was going to go out of town. This was for Thanksgiving. And so I was just like, well, this probably isn't a good time for this, because when he goes out of town, he doesn't use his phone, and he just doesn't connect with me. And that was one of the big hiccups we had early on, was him being out of town and me experiencing my first sub drop ever, and him not being there to help me through it. It was extremely difficult going through that alone. Also for my first time, and trying to navigate that, because we had done a scene before he left town, and I found myself dropping hard the next day, really hard. And I reached out to him. He did not respond. And then he didn't talk to me again the next day when I reached out a second time. And so it was very difficult going through that by myself. And so I knew, him leaving town again, I wouldn't get anything. I wouldn't get pretty much anything from him. I was not wrong. And and I felt stupid for thinking it would be different this time, but it became clear to me quickly that it wouldn't be. And after that last maintenance talk, he had left the key to the collar with me, just in case I needed to take it off. Well, I did need to take it off. Decollared myself, I think, that second day he was gone. It was a hard thing to do. It was a very emotional thing to do, but I knew it needed to happen. So I took the collar off. We had decided, after he came back, we did another maintenance session. We decided to take a step back because the dom sub relationship was not working out, obviously. And so I decided that maybe it would be better if we just were play partners, that we got the experience, We did scenes. I told him I would even be responsible for my own aftercare. And this was after something had turned in me. I think when I decollared myself, it was kind of this self-actualization thing where I had gotten to this point of, like, he even noticed the shift in me when he came back and we talked. He was like, there's, the vibe of you is very, very different. And it was, the way he characterized it is like, well, you're all strong, independent woman now. And I was just like, I knew the shift that had happened into me, and it was a sad shift because I knew what it meant. I knew that I had to accept the fact that this was not working out and that I was going to lose it. But we decided to take a step back, be play partners, and do a once a week meetup. And so that's what we decided to do moving forward. That first session, and he was fairly inexperienced, and I pretty much would kind of have to guide him on the other scenes we did about like what he could do, what it was okay to do. Some nervousness and everything. I of course that's fine. But I asked him if he wanted me to design the scene, and he said yes. So I did. And I sent it to him. I wrote it out and I sent it to him the days before the scene and was like, okay, do you have anything on this scene that you want to veto? Is this off limits? Is this off limits? Like, I don't know, so you're going to have to tell me. He did not respond. And then when it came up for the day to do the scene, I was pretty certain that it wasn't going to happen. I just had a feeling. Even though previous to this, everything he said he would do, he typically would do. Like if he told me, I'm going to be there at this time, I'm going to pick you up at this time, we're going to do this, he was pretty good about following through with those things. So I kind of suspected it wouldn't happen, but I also was like, well, he has showed me before that he's a man of his word, so we'll see. When it came time to do the scene, he did not show up. So I waited about half hour and texted him, just simply asked, are you coming? He did not respond. 2 hours later, he had somebody send me a text breaking up with me, essentially. And it made me angry. It made me sad, but I was mostly angry at myself for letting something like this happen, for going so far down this road, and making myself so vulnerable with somebody who would have the audacity to break up with me over text. And specifically mentioned that he still wanted to remain friends and everything. He hoped this wouldn't change anything about our friendship. And I was just like, if you wanted to remain friends, I didn't tell him this. I never even responded to the text that I was broken up with. I was done. I was so done by that point. No. But I was just like, if you wanted to remain friends, you would have manned up and you would have come over when you said you were going to come over to do the scene, and you would have just told me all that in person. Like, he was too scared to come to me face to face and explain to me why everything needed to end. Technically the dynamic had already ended. The play partners thing, we had both agreed that we wanted to do that. He should have came to me and told me in person. That's what should have happened. So, especially if he did want to maintain the friendship, because that's something I probably would have been able to do, because I understood why it ended up needing to happen like that. But I just couldn't believe how he did it. It was cold, it was cruel, and it was cowardly. I wouldn't have gotten upset. I wouldn't have thrown anything. I would have been fine if he had just came and talked to me. Instead, he decided to do it the way he did it. So that ended very badly. And I went ahead after that happened and I self-collared myself. I put down the investment on a black eternity collar, which you probably have noticed me wearing it. No, I am not somebody submissive. I put this on myself as a promise to myself that I will never let anybody put a collar on me again that quickly, that they will have to earn that thing if they want it to be around my neck. I self-collar I've had rituals before. I've never done an actual collar before. And I had a lot of reasons for wanting to go this route. I had wanted one of these things for years and years. And but there was, and when I put it on me, when I did get this thing in and put it on me, it's much lighter weight than the stainless steel one that he had put on me. So there's that. It is figuratively and emotionally lighter than the other one, but, and I'm glad I did put it on, because it was a little bit triggering when I did put it on for a brief moment, because it reminded me of wearing his collar and some of the feelings and the headspace that I was in during that time, and it was not great. So this was also a way for me to overwrite that save file of just not having that negative association anymore, because if I had not done this and then somebody else had put one on me at a later date, I might have been a little bit triggered by that trauma of what I went through. So I think it was overall a good choice to do it. Again, it is not to signal to anybody that I am taken, but it is more to signal that I am locked down, sort of a thing, that I will take my time this time, and that I will make sure that the person who wants to collar me is going to be there for me, because it was too emotionally hard doing what I had just gotten through. So, and I got the matching, wrist cuffs too and everything, and yeah, they were expensive, but it was this kind of thing of like, it's almost like a tattoo in some way. Like, I don't know when these things will be coming off me. Like I said, I have not been having much luck kinky dating, so and especially with my newfound resolve to not go through what I just went through with somebody else, it'll probably be a long fucking while before somebody collars me ever again. So this is a way to kind of like remind myself every day that I will not rush into something, and I will not do myself like I did myself before. But that is what's up with that. After he and I split up, I got over it fairly quickly. I was angry, especially at the way he ended it, but I put a lot of that experience behind me, a lot of that headspace, and the way I felt and how vulnerable I was. I put a lot of that behind me because it hurts to think about. But I did learn a lot. I learned a lot from that dynamic. I learned a lot about myself as a submissive. And I also learned about what I want in a dominant. And, for everything bad he did, not everything was bad. Like, he did some good things. And so learning about some of those positive things is very helpful. After rediscovering my submissive, or after really delving in and exploring my submissive side, I began to wonder if I really wasn't just a submissive. Because of the guilt and shame I had about being submissive before transitioning everything. I thought maybe this was me, that I had discovered the submissive side of myself, and that maybe I was wrong about being a switch all these years. Maybe I just am a sub. That turned out to not be true. Like, somebody in one of my cam rooms had came to me about wanting to do have me be their dom, and I kind of have a type that I would like to dominate, and I've I put out some personals not too long ago in some of the cities around here, just like, I'm a trans woman looking for either a male dominant or a female submissive, because I'm more attracted to the idea of dominating a woman. And but she had approached me. It was a woman. She had approached me about being her dom. I gave her my rate, because it's not something I'd be willing to do for free in that realm of being a cam girl. And so I gave her my rate, and she seemed to be very much on board. So as I got to thinking about like some of the ways I would play this out, some of the things I would have her do, I began to be very intrigued by the idea of having my own submissive. And she ended up not going through with it because couldn't really, it's not even that my rate was that crazy. It's just she was more interested in trying to get free shit out of me. And I caught that vibe pretty quick. I entertained it for a little bit. And when she kept trying to push to get free shit out of me, I was just kind of drew the line and was like, look, I have told you that this, you have to play ball first. You have to put some money down and show me that you're in this too, because we've done a lot of talking and you have not paid me anything. Most other cam girls would not even give you that kind of time. So that didn't work out, but it did get me thinking about how much I might like my own submissive. And exploring some of those thoughts within myself, I became very excited by the idea. So I went ahead and put out an ad looking for a male dominant or a female submissive. And this was also before I had another bad experience with a dom just last week, actually, who we had been doing a lot of like texting back and forth, some picture sharing, talking about our interests, our limits and stuff. And we seemed to vibe very well. And it seemed to be, he lived about an hour from me. So it seemed to be moving towards something that was going to take off. And so one night we were kind of doing an online scene, and he was talking about my limits as a sub and things like that. We were getting on to some really good conversation about like he seemed much more mature, very much more experienced and more adult than my previous dom. And I was very excited by it. And so the next day I asked him, I was like, would you like a list of my limits and interests and hard limits, soft limits, and some of like my conditions? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I came up with a list of, as I call them, basically my terms of service. Is then you meet these terms, and then you agree to my soft and hard limits, and then here are my interests, my curiosities. This is what you get if you agree to my terms of service. Two of those items on the terms of service included, I wanted a webcam meeting and then a meeting in neutral ground before any play were to happen, like a coffee or dinner. And I feel like that's being pretty, arguably, maybe even not that safe. But I feel like I can read people fairly well. And if I was catching an off vibe, I could, of course I would either take more time and require more meetings, or I would just go from there. But there was that, and then I also had the stipulation of mutual STD tests before any penetration were to happen. I don't know if it was one of those two items or maybe one of the others, like going over what I require as a submissive. Like when it comes to aftercare, like I need contact the next couple of days because that's when the sub drop seems to be the worst. It's like if we do a scene, I cannot take 2 days of silence. You have to fucking talk to me a little bit, at least. Doesn't seem like it's asking for very much, but it was asking a lot of my previous dom, apparently. So there was things like that on there. But like, I'm pretty fucking hardcore when it comes to a lot of my interests and everything. So it's like, there was a lot of kind of not extreme shit, but there was a couple of things that like, I feel like for a dom, especially kind of as he, a pleasure dom, a hard dom, that they would be quite excited to see on there. I was just going to bring up that list and share it, and also to kind of give an idea of some of the things that I'm into. Because I also wanted to kind of share a little bit about what kind of like not only submissive I am, but also like what kind of like kinks appeal to me. But yeah, anyway, some of my soft limits are like CBT, sex in public. Nothing that can put me on jail, basically. Some of my hard limits are like, I'm not into piercing, branding, age play, breath play, fisting, sounding, gun play, scat, yelling, tickling, rope around neck, food or oil play. And I'm probably not into giving rim jobs. So those are some of my hard limits. But then and those aren't the terms of service either. The terms of service, I refer to them as limits, but there were more things about the day or two check-ins after a scene, regular maintenance on the dynamic in a space where we are equals, things like that. Not introducing anything not previously discussed or negotiated before a scene. Those are more of my terms of service. But again, you agree to all that stuff, and then you get my interests, the things I am interested in. So I'm into like begging, I'm into gags of all types. I love ball gags, I love bar gags, inflatable gags. I love all gags. Anything. I am very much into speech restriction. As you may have gathered, I am the kind of person who feels like I have to speak. It is my most powerful weapon. It's how I navigate my way through the world. It's how I solve problems. It's how I get myself into opportunities. My power of speech is my greatest power. To have that taken from me, to surrender that to somebody, and to not only that, but to not have to talk for once in my fucking life is huge for me. So I'm very much into being gagged. Butt plugs in general, but also just butt plugs in like public and things like that. Very much into like going out with my dom wearing a butt plug. And being reminded of that dynamic sort of a thing, even if we're just doing something casual. I'm into choking, just no breath play. I'm into leather, rope, chain, duct tape, bondage. Very much, very, very, very much into bondage. And again, it comes back to the thing about feeling and being conditioned by society. Like I always have to be doing something. I have to be achieving a goal. I have to be accomplishing something. When I'm tied up, I don't have to do anything. And it's this level of catharsis that just takes me when I get tied up, where like suddenly I'm breathing different. Like I notice it very quickly, how my breathing changes. And so that is a very large appeal to me. I'm very much into caging and confinement. Keep me in a doggy crate overnight, like shit like that, like great. Candle wax, into that. Chastity, I'm very, very much into chastity. I'm into edging. I'm into forced orgasms and orgasm denial. I'm into discipline. I'm very much into eye contact, especially during a scene. Like being reminded of like eyes up here sort of a thing is very hot to me. I'm very much into speech, eye contact training in public, which is something I kind of discovered with my previous dom, the idea of surrendering that power to somebody else and being told like, okay, we're going into the GameStop, don't speak unless spoken to. That stuff is very appealing to me, and that it makes me like nervous to think about, but it makes you very excited to think about achieving that headspace, and that level of surrender is something that I found very appealing. I'm very much into attention to my feet. I used to have a foot fetish before I transitioned, and I guess I still do now that I have transitioned, but it's kind of moved away from being interested in other people's feet to more wanting people to be interested in my feet, oddly enough. I'm into humiliation. I'm into interrogation scenes. One of my favorite interrogation scenes, because it turns out I'm a little bit of a brat too. There's a specific type of interrogation scene that I think is very interesting, very, very intriguing, that I would like to share. It's the idea of, as a brat, if I were to suddenly take my dom's phone when he's not looking, put it in a safe lockbox with a combo on it, and when he's like, hey, where's my phone? Have you seen it? And I'm like, yeah, I locked it up. Get the numbers out of me. There's something about that kind of interrogation scene that I find very interesting, because it's like, especially if it's like a 3-number combo lock or something. Well, I mean, it doesn't even matter. But you basically, the sub is being interrogated for information. So it's this kind of thing of where the dom may push a little bit harder than they would, because they're generally maybe a little frustrated because like their fucking phone's locked up. But it has the sub giving more motivation to hold out that information as well. So the sub is getting pushed a little harder and also has more motivation to be resolved in their punishment and what they're receiving, whether it's pain or predicament bondage or some kind of interrogation scene. But what this allows to happen is that the sub is being pushed, having his or her limits pushed, in a safe way, that basically the safe combo is the safe word in that scene, but it's not the safe word. And obviously safe words should be reserved for very they're very serious. When you hear a safe word, it's a very serious thing. This helps take that levity out of the safe word, because now it's a different kind of word. It's a different kind of safe word. You get it? It's a safe word. Not only is it a safe word, it's actually the word to the safe. And so it allows the sub to get pushed to this realm of trying to hold out and then finally giving in and being like, okay, stop. It's another way of saying, okay, stop. I'm done. Like, you got me. Here's your phone back. And I think that interrogation scene is very interesting. I think it has a lot of possibilities for me, both as a dom and a sub. Very much into kissing, sensual dominations. I'm a very sensual person. I'm very much into position training, learning positions and having like a routine worked out on like what are my expectations for, you know, yeah, very much into position training. I'm into photography and videos. I'm open to content creation, doing like mutual work in that field. I'm into punishment. I'm into sensory deprivation. I'm into slavery aspects of like being a sex slave, stuff like that. I'm into shibari, very much into rope, like aesthetic rope bondage. Would like to one day be good enough to do suspension. I'm into spreader bars. I'm into total power exchange, vibrators, and finally, hands taped into fists. I think that's very cute. And yes, yes, please. And then I'm curious to negotiate or try. These are things that are on my list that I would need to have a level of comfort with my dom, or conversely with my submissive, because a lot of these double down for what I would want to engage in as a dominant as well as a submissive. I'm curious to try knife play. I'm curious to try electro play, a little bit of electricity, like an electro wand. I'm curious about degradation, more physical than mental. I consider mental to kind of be more humiliation, and then degradation to be more physical. I'm very much into hoods, abduction play, dominated by multiple people, biting, cat suits, crying, and exploring that. Posture collars, maybe water sports. I'm not sure. I just don't like a mess. But it's like this kind of thing of for if I'm like in a tub and being peed on, and it like I get it from like the submissive standpoint. I don't know if I'd get it for the peeing aspect, but like I get how that's like an extreme form of a way for somebody to show dominance over you is to fucking pee on you. I get it. I don't know if I would be in it so much for the pee as I would for that level of submission. In a vacuum bed, I would like to try one of those one day. But that's basically, yes, that's a very brief roll of some of the things I'm into and what that potential dom would get if they agreed to my terms of service. I sent all that to that dom that I had kind of been talking to and vibing with for a little bit, and he never responded to me. He ghosted me. So that did not go well. But not letting it get me down. I'm glad that I've figured that out about him before I continued to kind of play with him virtually, because I thought it was heading towards something. I guess he had something else in mind. So in some ways, it's good that I nipped that in the bud and I didn't let it go on and then get hurt. So it was yeah, but that's kind of two bad dom experiences in a row. I'm kind of leaning a little bit into my switch side, affirming that I am indeed a switch. Thinking about having a submissive has had me very, very excited by that prospect lately. And one thing too about it is that, again, feeling like I am just now getting to live my life, I'm very impatient to want to be in a dynamic. And in some ways, I feel like the submissive side has not worked out, but also I need to take my time. I need to go very, very slow because I need to be able to trust that Dom is going to take care of me before I make myself that vulnerable with somebody ever again. Now, as far as having my own submissive, I trust myself to be a good dom to them and to be a good caretaker to them more than I trust somebody else to be a good caretaker to me, especially given my two bad experiences. So I'm more leaning towards exploring my dominant side now, which kind of took me a little bit by surprise because I got so into my submissive side that I was even to one point where I was like, am I even really a switch? Like, am I just a sub? Given some of the exploration I've done recently about my dominant side, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that I am indeed a switch. It gets me just as excited thinking about some of that stuff and about the dominant mindset and how I would treat my submissive and what expectations I would have of them and all the things I would offer as far as being a caretaker and in kind of fulfilling some of those roles from a total power exchange that I wished my previous Dom could have fulfilled with me. But thinking about fulfilling some of those things and what I get in exchange for that, because, some people talk about the gift of submission, but it's not a gift. It's not a gift you give. It's an exchange. You offer your submission in exchange for something else from the dominant. And thinking about that from the other side of the fence, about here are the things I can offer my submissive as being a caretaker, and somebody who's always in their corner, somebody that they can come to with anything, and that I would help them get their needs met. But also the other flip side of that is that I have somebody who has given themselves to me, who essentially belongs to me, or their body belongs to me in a certain way, and that they're there to fulfill my pleasures and fantasies as a dominant. But the exchange is that I am there to help them grow as a submissive and meet their goals that they want to meet through submission, and having them offer their submissive fantasies to me, and assuring them that I will help them, I will listen, and that I will help them try to meet those needs if I'm capable of it. A lot of that gets me extremely excited. And so I don't think there's any doubt left in my mind that I am indeed a switch, which is good, because that's what I've always identified as a switch. I think I just got swept up in being submissive, that I was just like, well, this is the greatest thing ever. I can't imagine wanting to do anything else. But now, after rediscovering my dominant side, I'm getting extremely excited by the prospect of being that person now. And so I think that's evidence enough that I am indeed a switch. But I still need to really explore that side of myself and decide if that's truly what I am. Because I think it is. It's just I'm not too well versed, I guess, on what switching entails. I don't know if it's like I wasn't sure if it's the kind of thing where I switch like on the given night, where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to be the sub tonight, the dom tomorrow. I think it's probably going to be more of a phase thing, where like I'm in sub mode, I'm in dom mode, and that's really all I'm interested in doing at a given time. But then maybe a year later, however long later, I might flip or switch and just be like, now I want to be a submissive again. I used to characterize it like if I was in a job position where I had a lot of power, which I've been in plenty of those, I would feel like I need to be more submissive to balance myself out. Whereas if I'm in a job where I don't feel like I have much pull or much say, I would want to be the dominant, because I feel like I'm lacking power and I want power to balance myself out. So I'm discovering very much now what it means to be a switch, and yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at, is that I'm so deeply ingrained in this stuff, and I'm reading about it my whole life and shit, basically, and just exploring it my whole life. But now I'm finally doing it, and I'm doing it as the person that I was meant to be, but I just didn't know. So that's generally where I'm at, and it's tough. It's really fucking tough, especially, because like I don't have a lot of experience, and it's like the kind of thing where if I'm betting with somebody, or we're talking about possibly doing a dynamic, and they've been in like these kind of dynamics, this one lasted this long, this one lasted that long, and then they ask me like, well, so what's your experience? And I'm like, I've done scenes, but I've topped my longtime girlfriend who was vanilla. Like I've done tying and sensory play and a few other things, but I don't have any like real experience being the dominant in a relationship, and I've barely got any experience being the submissive in a relationship. And yeah, I'm 36. And so it's like this thing, and like interviewing with kink partners is very much like you're interviewing somebody for a job, and they're also interviewing you for a job. So it's like you see them taking notes suddenly, and you're like, oh shit, like I should be taking notes. Yeah, and I've been doing these interviews with people, and like luckily with most people we've been very adult to just after the discussion be like, it doesn't look like we're a good match, but like we like each other, let's be friends, let's catch up if you're ever in town. But yeah, it doesn't look like our kinks line up very, very good. You're this type of sub, I really want this type of sub. And that's been pretty cool. That with these like-minded people, we're all intelligent and open enough to be like, look, this is what my needs are. These are what your needs are. We're probably not going to work out. So there's no point in trying to do it anyway. So that's been good. But yeah, so I am still trying. I'm hopeful. I am hopeful that I will either get a submissive or a dominant. I am starting to take a step back on finding a dominant just because it's like been hurt twice now. It's moving kind of fast. I think I need to meet somebody a little bit more organically and really get to know them so that I know that they're going to be there to take care of me and that they're going to have an idea of what my needs are, have an idea of who I am. Like, again, I feel like I'm more capable. I trust myself more to take care of somebody else as a submissive than I trust somebody else to take care of me as a submissive. And maybe that's just because I've just got hurt twice after making myself very vulnerable to dominance, that I'm having that shift. But I think there's a lot to learn. If I do want to come back to being submissive later, I think there's a lot to learn in being a dominant and what being a good dom is and how to take care of my submissive. I think there's a lot of value in that, and I think there's a lot to learn. And again, like I love the idea. Like the shit, thinking about the shit I would want to do to a submissive is like, yes, please, like, give me a sub, so I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to like get a sub and then be like, oh, I want to be the sub, I'm jealous. Like, I don't think it's gonna be anything like that. So anyway, that concludes episode 2 of the TG BDSM podcast. I have given a brief introduction into myself, who I am as a trans person, who I am as a switch. And from here, that's basically, you're all caught up. And so the journey, really, we're going to go from here. I'm going to reach out to a few kinky trans people, attempt to get them to talk to me. There may be video, there may not be. It may just be my video with their vocals overlaid, and we'll have the discussion like that. But I think that's the way I want to take the show. And then if I have something to talk about or a topic I want to get into and discuss, I may continue to do these little one-on-one episodes here and there. But I would like this to be an interview-centered show because I think there's a lot of value in getting other people's experiences, not only as trans people, but also as kinky trans people. So that concludes episode 2. Thank you. Follow me on socials. Get at your girl and share this with your friends. And please subscribe. Continue to watch. Okay. Homegirl out.